to indicate if you wish to speak, and I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Members are reminded that apart from indicating you wish to speak or that you have to leave the meeting, the chat function should not be used for questions or any other purpose. Members, when speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please reference a page or paragraph number and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When invited to speak, please ensure you turn on your microphone and video. Now, if I may ask officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Lee.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Matthew Lee and I'm Lead Specialist Place here at Malden District Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Johnson? Now, if I may ask officers...
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Michael Johnson. I'm Lead Specialist Development Management. Thank you.
Welcome. Julia Sargent.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members. My name is Julia Sargent. I'm Specialist Development Management.
Thank you, Julia. And Kate, please.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Katie Fuller. I'm clerk to this afternoon's committee.
Thank you very much. I know, are there any other officers present, please?
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. Tara Bird. I'm Committee Services Officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Kate, please can you now carry out a roll call of members to confirm who is in attendance, please? Thank you.
Yes, Chairman. Members, I will call your name in alphabetical order. Please could you indicate if you are present, starting with Councillor Miss Beale. Councillor Edwards.
Present, Kate.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd.
Present.
Councillor Lagan.
Present, Katie. Good afternoon, members.
Thanks.
Afternoon.
Councillor Mays.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Councillor Nunn.
Yes, here, Katie, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Hello, Kate. Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stilts.
Good afternoon, present, Kate.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And Councillor Swain.
Yes, present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Katie, and welcome to all members and, of course, members of the public who are receiving this through live streaming. Agenda item number 2.
Chairman, sorry, I think you need to record that I'm actually listening.
Yes, I do apologise.
Councillor Bamford.
Councillor Bamford is shown. Could I ask, actually it's, sorry, my fault there. Are there any other members who have not been mentioned who are present?
Councillor Stamp.
Thank you.
Councillor Wendy Stamp, welcome to you. Agenda item number 2 is apologies for absence. May I have any apologies that you've received, please, Kate?
We have not received any apologies.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July 2020 and they're found on pages 7 to 10 are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that motion, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now, please.
Councillor seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. If any member wishes to raise any matter of accuracy, please use the chat function to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. Kate, can you advise if any other member has indicated a wish to speak? I can't see any on mine.
No, I've had no request to speak.
That's kind. Thank you very much. So in order to have these accepted, we'll have to take the vote. taking each member in alphabetical order. Please state whether you are for, against or abstain, or do you wish to agree these minutes by assent?
Assent.
Yes. Agreed.
Assent.
Agreed.
Assent agreed. Assent
Yes,
agreed.
agreed.
Thank you,
Assent agreed.
members.
Assent agreed.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 4, declarations of interest. This is to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda and having regard to paragraph 6 to 8 inclusive of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. If any member has an interest to declare, please use the chat function now to indicate, and I will invite you to speak.
Yes.
I see one. So, Kate, can you advise if any other member has indicated a wish to speak? I know I've got Councillor Morris.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, Chairman, we've got Councillor Edwards and Councillor Morris.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, I've got a non-pecuniary interest. My family owns a holiday caravan on one of the adjacent parks. I very often use that part of the seawall, and I have been in conversation with a few people concerning this by walking past it. Thank you. Sorry, Chairman, can I also say that I would like to take this opportunity to second the officer's recommendation for approval of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Edwards.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I'm aware that we have been advised that we no longer need to declare an interest if we're a ward member, but I'm a member of Heybridge Parish Council, and I believe we have to, or might have to declare a declaration. So I'm just declaring that I'm a member of Heybridge Parish Council.
Okay, that is noted. Thank you very much indeed. Any other declarations? I think your hand is still up, Councillor Edwards. Thank you very much. Okay, so agenda item number 5. This is 19/01164 full. This is Mill Beach Public House, Goldhanger Road, Heybridge. We now move on to this agenda item, and these are found on pages 11 to 42. Please note that a member's update in relation to this application has also been circulated prior to the meeting. In a moment, I'll call on the officer to present this item. Members are reminded that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the chat function within the meeting, and then I will come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. Ms. Sargent, could you please present the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing and erection of a replacement public house with a first floor apartment and change of use of the land for the siting of 12 holiday lodge caravans. This is the location plan of the application site, which is an almost rectangular parcel of land located to the south of Goldhanger Road and west of the Mill Beach Seaside Resort. To the northeast of the application site on the opposite side of Goldhanger Road is the Barrow Marsh caravan site. Oops. This is the existing block plan, and the site is currently occupied by a 2-storey building which was last used as a public house. It's currently in poor state of repair. There's also a single-storey outbuilding and a caravan located, shown here to the west of the existing public house. The remainder of the site is predominantly open and soft landscaped with grass and some trees. This is the proposed block plan, which shows the positioning of the replacement public house which is in approximately the same position as the existing. This is the illustrative master plan for the development, shows the replacement public house and the 12 holiday lodges to the east, which is the area that's currently open grassland. The site would be accessed from Goldhanger Road, with the car park along the western boundary of the site and some spaces to the front of the public house. There'd be 25 parking spaces in total for the public house, and 1 parking space next to each lodge, as shown here. There's also a new permissive path running north-south, shown over here, along the western boundary, which would link Goldhanger Road to the seawall and into the existing public footpath network. So here's the existing site plan, which shows in better detail the footprint of the existing public house, as well as the outbuilding and caravan. And here we have the proposed site plan, which shows the footprint of the public house with the outbuilding and caravan removed. And it also shows an outdoor terraced area. So the area that's hashed grey here is the internal footprint of the public house, and this white area around is an external seating area. So we have existing elevations of the public house. So the one at the top shows the elevation facing the Mill Beach Marine Club to the west, and the one at the bottom is the elevation facing onto Goldhanger Road. And it can be seen from this, the building's had several extensions over the years since it was originally built. And some more elevations. So again, top is facing east across the grassed area. At the bottom is the south elevation, which currently faces onto the seawall. So the existing ground floor plan and the existing first floor plan, which shows a residential apartment there currently, which was used by the manager of the public house, and the existing roof plan. So next we come to the proposed elevations for the replacement public house. These show the elevations facing north towards Goldhanger Road, which is the one at the top, and west towards the Mill Beach Marine Club. It can be seen that there's an external staircase on this elevation, which would be the access to the first floor apartment. And the next elevations, we have east across the site, and then south overlooking the estuary. The design of the replacement house, or public house, would be rectangular form building, 3 north-south running gable roof lines, as can be seen here. It would have a smaller footprint than the existing public house, although the ridgeline would remain the same. It includes a high level of fenestration to make the most of the location of the site with views across the estuary. And there's a first floor terrace area erected around the flat, which would create a part covered seating area at ground floor level for the public house. It would be finished in timber boarding, timber windows and doors, and it's proposed to reuse the existing roof tiles from the existing public house. So we have the ground floor plan showing the bar area and indoor as well as outdoor seating. This dashed line here shows the extent of the terrace at first floor level, so showing that some of the covers would have outdoor seating under cover. And then the first floor plan, which shows a 2-bedroom apartment, which would be used by the manager of the public house or other staff employed by the pub or holiday lodge business. And the roof plan. And here we have some section plans of the public house, again showing the terrace and the relationship with the building, the seawall. The agent has provided some illustrative visualisations to assist in the understanding of the proposal in terms of the design and the materials. There's one here from the sea wall, and then one from within the site. We've also got some indicative images of the holiday lodges proposed. The lodges would fall within the statutory definition of a caravan. However, a condition has been recommended to require the lodges to be finished in timber or reconstituted wood, unless otherwise agreed, and that's condition 8 on the main agenda, to ensure that the appearance would be appropriate and consistent with what's been suggested within the application. Here's an aerial view showing the context of the application site and its close proximity to existing caravan sites. Some photographs of the site. So we have a view to the front northern elevation of the existing public house from Goldhanger Road and close within the site. And then views of the eastern section of the site where the holiday lodges are proposed, you can just make out the adjacent caravan park, and then there's another caravan park on the opposite side, Goldhanger Road. Some views from along the seawall. So we have looking west here, top, and then looking east at the bottom. And then views from along Goldhanger Road from the site. The application has been supported by a number of studies and reports, including a tourism need assessment. It's considered that the tourism need assessment has demonstrated that there is a need and a demand for the holiday lodges proposed. Furthermore, the application site is located within an area that is characterised by caravan parks, and the addition of 12 holiday lodges would not result in any adverse harm to the area or countryside location. The site is also relatively well connected to other holiday sites and benefits from the seawall along the southern boundary, which is public footpath. In terms of the replacement public house, there's no objection to this. Whilst the original structure is a period property and has some architectural merit, over the years there have been a lot of unsympathetic extensions, including a large flat-roofed extension to the front of the building, which has harmed the visual appearance of it. Its replacement with a more efficient and usable building is therefore welcomed and would be in line with policy E3, which seeks the retention of community facilities, which a public house falls within. The design of the replacement public house is also considered to be acceptable and would be finished in timber weatherboarding, which is characteristic of the area. The application site is located within flood zone 3. However, no objections have been raised by any consultees on this basis, and it's considered that the submitted information has demonstrated that, subject to conditions, the development would remain safe for its lifetime, would not increase flood risk elsewhere. It should be noted that as part of the mitigation of the site, it would be evacuated upon receipt of a flood warning. However, in a worst case scenario, in the event of anyone remaining on site, the first floor area above the public house is to act as a safe refuge. The council's emergency planner has accepted this approach as appropriate, and conditions have been recommended to that effect. Therefore, overall, it's considered development would result in redevelopment of this site in a manner that would bring it back into its use as a community facility in the form of the public house, as well as providing additional holiday accommodation, which would result in a boost to the local tourism economy. And the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions as detailed in section 8 of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Sargent. A very good presentation. Thank you very much for that. So members, under the Council's public participation scheme, we have received one submission from the applicant. In line with the public participation scheme, I've reviewed the submission and I will now read out, allocating 2 minutes for the reading of this submission, which is in accordance with the scheme. Members of the Planning Committee, my name is Mike Ringer and I speak to you today as a local businessman and owner of the Mill Beach Public House. With the ongoing national decline in pub business, our last tenant was unable to maintain a viable business and left the public house in a very poor state, which has since been vandalised and now presents an eyesore in this otherwise attractive tourist location. This application seeks to rectify that problem. Over the last 2 years, the pub has been marketed by local pub letting agents, Sydney Phillips, but has failed to attract a buyer. I have investigated whether it would be viable to refurbish the pub to better attract a new tenant. However, with a total project cost estimated at £1.2 million, this greatly exceeds the refurbished value of the property. It would be impossible to raise the finance for such a venture. I have therefore looked at the opportunity to rebuild a modern new pub with glazed sliding doors and to allow it to take better advantage of the estuary views and passing footfall on the coastal path. The cost of rebuilding this new pub is still unable to provide an adequate return on investment. Therefore, I propose 12 high-quality wood-clad holiday lodges which can both cross-subsidise the rebuilding of the pub and provide customers to support a viable pub business. National and local tourism trends demonstrate greater demand for higher quality holiday accommodation such as holiday lodges. The local supply of holiday lodges is limited to a few lodges on a larger static caravan park. These lack the exclusivity that I can offer to meet this demand at my site. We have addressed all the matters raised with your planning officers and their consultees, and I therefore respectfully ask for your support in helping me to remove the current eyesore and build a new pub with 12 high-quality holiday lodges to provide an attractive facility for both local residents and visiting tourists. So that was a text sent in by the application, and I'll now. So the recommendation, as set out within the report, is that it is recommended. If any member wishes to second that motion in order that we can debate that, please turn on your video, unmute your microphone and state your name now. I think Councillor Morris did second that proposal, am I correct?
Yes, please, Chair. I'd like to second the motion. We should be supporting this.
Thank you very much. So if any member now wishes to make any comments on the report, and I do note that Councillor Nunn has, I would ask that they indicate that they wish to speak, please.
Chairman, Councillor Edwards as well, please.
Thank you. So, Katie, can you advise me on who has asked so far to speak, please?
Yes, Chair. We've got Councillor Edwards, Councillor Nunn, Councillor Swain, and Councillor Lagan.
Thank you very much. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. As well, a ward councillor, although it's in the East Ward, I note first of all that this was a member call-in. I'm not sure why it was called in, as because the member no longer is a member. But I just want to make a couple of notes and an observation. First of all, in regards to the lodges, I don't see any problem at all with the lodges, bearing in mind, as it was previously shown, that this is actually an area where lodges are, and so will not be out of place. I also noticed on condition 30 and 31, the issue regarding people evacuating upstairs, number of 200 people, in the event of a flood evacuation. But I do note, and this is just an observation, that the stairs to the upstairs is on the outside rather than the inside. So it's just an observation. I'm not sure if that's, well, I'm sure that's actually been looked at in terms of
safety,
having to have an evacuation when there's a flood area, flooding outside rather than trying to go upstairs on the inside. It's just an observation. But I fully support this. This is an eyesore in Heybridge, and having a new facility like this will be good for the Heybridge itself. So I fully support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms Sargent, would you like to come back on that before I go to any other officers? Is there any stairs shown inside?
Thank you, Chairman. No, the staircase is external. That has been looked at, and essentially the flood event could happen at any time, essentially. And generally, the site would be evacuated. It'd be a worst case scenario that anyone would be left on site. And with it being an external staircase, it would mean it wouldn't be reliant on the public house being actually unlocked and open for people in the lodges to be able to access the first floor refuge. So an external staircase would overcome that issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Nunn.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do want to speak, but I'm happy to give way to any other Heybridge members before I do so.
I haven't. None others have indicated their desire to speak. I've got Councillor Swain and then Councillor Lagan.
Okay.
Councillor Morris has also asked to speak.
Oh, okay. Could I just pause you there? Then I'll go to Councillor Morris first.
Thank you.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Councillor Nunn, and thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that we really should be supporting this. I personally spent many a evening in my younger days drunk at that place, and every time I walk past it, my heart sinks a little bit because it is a shambles now. It's a derelict building. It's a bit of an eyesore. It's sad that the building's got to go, but ultimately we do need to make use of it because there's not much worse to look at than a derelict building. This will obviously bring employment benefits, tourist benefits, local economy benefits, and it should be something that we are supporting. Hopefully it'll be a nice little hub, a nice little tourist buzz point, and bring much needed tourism and economic, getting my words in them, economic benefits to the area. So I'd ask members to support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nunn.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I first of all want to start off by saying that I'm not hugely against this development, but in fact there are aspects of it that I particularly like. The fact that the height will not exceed the existing height, and the fact that the tiles are going to be reused is certainly to its credit, because let's not forget the view of this building is not just from the road, it's from the river as well. So we need to keep that in mind. However, it would be remiss of me not to make a few comments, I think. First of all, I don't think any proper credence has been given to the history of this site, both in terms of our local heritage, but also the impact on the site. Because this was a mill at one time, there is a mill pond, which is now filled in, but it's the area where the lodges are going. So I hope that the developer and planning department has taken that into account. Also, during the 1953 floods, this site was completely underwater. So it is prone to pretty heavy duty flooding. You might say, well, that was 1953, but you know, tides being tides, that could happen again. Historically, this area is full of barrows and mounds, and also was the site of an early salt works. Notwithstanding that, Mill Beach takes its name from a windmill, which was first erected on the site in 1703. And the hotel itself, the Mill Beach Hotel, was built in 1894. And I just think it's a great shame that all of that history is going to be swept away by this new development. And I just wish that the developer had taken that into account a bit more and at least given some kind of signpost or nod to the past. But no doubt Mr. Lee will come back on a number of those points, Chairman, and say that's nothing at all to do with planning, and it's him rambling on about history again. But I just thought I needed to say those things. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nunn, thank you for that. It seems like it might be a good idea to have some kind of notice board there, perhaps with that nod to the past. I know that Councillor Morris wants to come back on something you said. So, with the permission of Councillor Swain and Lagan, could he just finish? Could he come back on that?
Yes, sure.
Absolutely, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morris.
Thank you very much. Just let Councillor Nunn know that the last time it flooded was before there was a seawall defence there. And we had the highest tide a few years ago. I can remember having to go down there and check on my family's caravan, and the highest tide ever recorded didn't flood it. So the seawalls worked very effectively. So the 1953 flood shouldn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'll go on now to Councillor Swain.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. There are a number of areas I'd like to raise points on. First of all, on the specification of the cottages, in the flood situation, they are anchored, they are firmly tied down, aren't they, or fixed to the ground, as I understand it. Secondly, on accommodation, it's been mentioned that there will be perhaps 6 people, 2 full-time, 4 part-time, as well as the manager. I'm not sure whether there is accommodation for them, or whether it's not expected that there would be any other staff accommodated on site. If so, I'm not quite sure where they would be. On the parking, this is a pub, of course, as well as the facility for the holiday lodges. I hope the officers are satisfied there is enough there for a normal pub trade, because we cannot have any parking on the road there. And I would think actually highways need to look at making some restriction to ensure that there isn't parking on the road. I think that would be very dangerous. Then the main point really concerns flood risk. I think, as we've covered, a general tidal flood, it would be just a general disaster for the whole area anyways, rather than this specific property. But I'm concerned about surface water. The whole site slopes down towards Goldhanger Road. So it is absolutely essential that runoff is absolutely minimal, and that the SUDs are adequate to deal with extreme rainfall. I note that there's not much detail on that, and that is obviously a condition that has to satisfy the Flood Risk Authority. And I would like to know whether we will see the details of the surface water drainage system and maintenance that's referred to in 5.6. Further, with regard to surface water, the application notes that a third of the site will be impermeable. I wonder if that can be reduced by ensuring that some of the parking or the materials used for parking is permeable, because this would greatly increase the risk of runoff into Goldhanger Road. And we need to be reassured that the normal drainage facilities will cope with normal runoff as would for a greenfield. It's probably not something for the planners, but for Anglian Water. But I am amazed that we allow surface water excess surface water to go into the public combined sewer. This sort of action can only increase the risk of foul contamination and foul sewage being pushed out into the public area. I don't know whether the flood risk, the flood assessment and the SUDs and so on can actually avoid this possibility of surface water going into the combined public sewer.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for that. Councillor Lagan, I have you down next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just pull up my paper here. These are really comments, and I echo other members and the officer's excellent report and presentation that the public house itself is very much an eyesore now, and I'm very saddened that it's got into that condition, and I fully understand the principle of the developer. But what concerns me a little bit was section 5.1.4, because the application site is outside the defined settlement boundary for Haybridge. Obviously, with the intrinsic beauty of the countryside, it has been assessed with policies E3, E4 and E5. It's interesting to me that the loss of that particularly vista, and where Councillor Nunn talks about the mill pond there, and I'm very mindful, Mr. Lee, that no one owns a view, that it's a bit of a shame that the whole of the area will be used up for holiday lodges, where we seem to have a substantial number of holiday accommodation that's available to us in that area that's not all used. And also we have a perfectly good travel lodge, which is a different type of accommodation, I know, but we are getting more accommodation. So my concern is a little bit about, we've got the amount of development, because the pub itself does need something doing to it, without a shadow of a doubt. But my concern is that number of lodges really will cause an additional burden on flood risk, etc. And really, we should be in a position where we look about how do we preserve some of the countryside and the areas that we've got still, which are still open, rather than infilling all the time. So I have a concern that the intrinsic beauty of the area is going to be lost, although I think that the thought of the plan and the principle of the plan is actually sound. So they're just comments, they're not criticism, they're just comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So either Ms. Sargent or Mr. Lee, perhaps, can you just assist on a couple of those? I've noted those. Were you able to come back on any of those, Ms. Sargent? I've got a note of them if you haven't.
Do you want me to pick up a couple, Julian? Do you want to pick up some of the others, or how do you want to deal with it?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
If you want to take a couple, Matt, that's fine.
Okay. Just a couple of the points, predominantly ones raised by Councillor Nunn. My understanding, or I'm not quite 100% clear on what the point in relation to the fact there was a pond there is. If he's talking about the structural requirements, that is not something that planning would take into account. That would be something that the applicant would need to ensure is acceptable, and if there is engineering works needed to ensure that it is safe and secure, that's at his own risk and at his own cost. That isn't something that the planning system particularly takes into account. Just of the history of the building, yeah, my understanding is it was built, we know it was built sometime between 1874 and 97 because of the OS maps, and I think it was licensed in 1894. So, you know, the fact that it is a historic building has been considered, and the local plan authority is well aware of that. We've done an assessment historically on the application, on the site, you know, and we don't consider as the LPA that the property contains any notable architectural features of its time. Obviously, as Ms. Sargent said in the presentation, there have been a number of extensions, additions and alterations, and on balance, or I don't think it's even on balance, you know, it's a professional opinion of the LPA that the loss of the historic asset on itself would not stand up as a defendable reason for refusal. But obviously, to a certain extent, that is a subjective opinion, but that is the professional officer's point. In relation to flooding, I thought that was being talked quite a lot. So, but in relation to Councillor Nunn's point, the site is in a flood risk. It's a site that, if this was permanent residential accommodation rather than lodges, that is holiday accommodation, I think it's something that is quite likely to be getting a different recommendation for. Government advice in relation to holiday accommodation is slightly less strict when it comes to flood zones. The idea being that the occupiers of these lodges should have permanent accommodation to relocate to if and when there is a risk. And as Ms. Sargent said in relation to the terrace at the pub, there is that as an emergency fallback. But I think that would be, as to use Ms. Sargent's phrase, a worst case scenario. To be honest, that was the exact phrase that was going through my head before she said it. 5.4, the section 5.4 deals with parking. And as the report says, the car parking requirement posed for the public house is acceptable and policy compliant. In relation to the accommodation, I think I'm not quite 100% sure what the question was, but my understanding is that there is a flat on site, but that would be for one family / aspect of the employment, not expecting everybody that works at the lodges and the public house to live in that one flat. And members, I think it's an interesting point about it, the building being an eyesore, and that's, as a reason alone, shouldn't be a reason just to demolish the building. Obviously, then that could, in theory, encourage people to let buildings degenerate to a state where they're no longer seen to be attractive, and therefore a separate permission is acceptable on principle. So I think that should be given limited weight in the overall assessment of the application. And I think the officer's report guides you through that thought process. In relation to the number of lodges and the impact on the countryside, that, to a certain extent, as always, is a subjective opinion. Obviously, officers consider that there is no demonstrable harm, or at least not to such a degree as it warrants reason for refusal. As members will know, I always advise, you know, every development has some form of harm, but it's about meeting such a standard that it becomes so onerous or so problematic that it crosses the threshold to be a reason for refusal. The officer's recommendation is that that isn't the case in this, but obviously a area of countryside in policy terms will become more developed in the fact that there will be lodges on site. Therefore, that is a change. And that, to an extent, is a subjective opinion, but that's up to members as decision makers to come to. I don't know if, Julie, if you've got anything you want to add to any of the other points, or some of the ones I've already said.
Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Miss Sargent.
Like I said, I don't think anything particularly other than SUDS was the other issue that was raised, I believe. Just to confirm that conditions are recommended that we would have full details of the SUDS along with the maintenance and logs of the maintenance, and that would be sent to us to be agreed in consultation with the lead local flood authority.
Right. Okay. The other thing that I've got here is about the spec on the lodges themselves, that they are securely anchored in the event of any flood. Do we have any details on that?
Confirm that is a condition, Councillor Hurd, yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think, Councillor Swain, you just wanted to come back on the parking.
Yes, a couple of points. Bearing in mind this is a pub, the parking has to allow for commercial vehicles as well in the parking spaces. And secondly, can we not put in a condition about permeability of the parking areas?
Mr. Lee? I think you're still muted,
Yep.
sorry.
Sorry, Chairman. Obviously, there's a condition requirement in relation to discharge conditions and about such as foul and flooding and SUDS and everything, and those will come forward with a suite of recommendations that should ensure that there is no harm. That may well include permeable materials for the car parking. In theory, we can impose a condition, but there is, if they were to come forward with a different suite that still met the requirement, it would be difficult to say why we had to say it had to be permeable.
Okay,
that makes sense. But I think, sorry, not Councillor Johnson, Mr. Johnson wants to expand on that point. Thanks.
Yes,
well,
Mr. Johnson.
Just briefly, just to say that condition 23 does cover that matter in its entirety. It's quite detailed. It talks about no development works above ground level until detailed surface water drainage scheme for the site based on the sustainable drainage principles and assessment of the hydrological, etc., etc. I mean, this does cover in its entirety the whole of the site, and an assessment that the permeability of the site, its infiltration rate, as opposed to any surface water collection, is suitably assessed and mitigated. So in my view, with I have to admit my bit of understanding of hydrological issues on these sites, that is suitable and gives us a safeguard for the details to be submitted and assessed as appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Katie, can you tell me, has any other members indicated that they wish to speak?
Yes, Councillor Shaughnessy.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
Coming, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Katie. Yes, I too am very pleased that the existing tiles are going to be used on this new pub. I think that's great, and I think more use of this sort of thing, should be carried out. I would like to know what the building west of the designated area is that wasn't pointed out when Katie gave her demonstration. I'm also very pleased that a register is going to be kept here. I mean, I don't know if this is the norm on sort of caravan parks in general, but I'm very pleased at that, so that the 28-day thing can be adhered to, and I hope someone will want to sort of look at that at regular intervals. I think that was mentioned in the text somewhere. I like the design. I also like the fact that there are bifold doors on the ground floor terrace. I think that's a nice innovation. And of course, it wouldn't be me speaking without talking about ecology. And so I refer to 5.7.20. It's at the end of the paragraph, and it talks about bird or bat boxes or creation of a wildlife area. I would rather like to know why it can't be all three, because bats can't necessarily use bird boxes and birds can't necessarily use bat boxes because the apertures are a different shape. And I think a wildlife area here somewhere to sort of mitigate for the lodges would be a great idea. And of course, leaving the trees and hedges protected, I'm also in favour of, and of course, native planting. So there's a couple of questions in there, but just some comments as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Shaughnessy. Who would like to respond to those, officer-wise?
If I can assist, Chairman, the start of that, the property to the west of the site is the Mill Beach Marine Club. That wasn't highlighted during the presentation.
Thank you.
In terms of the ecology report submitted, we have a bat survey as well as a phase 1 ecological report, and they recommend, and there's a condition requiring the recommendations to be carried forward into the development, which includes bat boxes and bird boxes within the development site. And there is a soft landscaping condition requiring full details of soft landscaping. It could be incorporated into that condition if members wished, that the details to include some native species and wildlife friendly planting, that could be incorporated into that condition.
Yes, well, I personally would like that. I can't speak for other people, but I'm glad that you say that it's bird boxes and bat boxes. So maybe the text needs to be just brought up to date. Thank you so much, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other members, Katie, indicated they wish to speak?
No, Chairman, we've got no more members.
Thank you. Well, I'm satisfied all members who wish to speak have done so. So I propose that we move to the vote. So the officer's recommendation is that this is agreed. So you please say whether it is you are either for the recommendation or against it. Katie, can you now please take the vote?
Thank you. Members, I will take your names in alphabetical order. Please could you indicate whether you are for, against or abstain?
Sorry, could I just stop you there? Could we just confirm that that is with the amendments referred to by Councillor Shaughnessy, with the amendments?
Okay.
Thank you. Carry on.
With the amendments, so Councillor Edwards.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd.
Yes, I'm for this.
Councillor Lagan.
Against, please, Katie.
Councillor Mays.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
For.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
For.
Councillor Stilts.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Swain.
For.
Thank you. That is 8 for, 1 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much for that, Kate. So that is agreed. Agenda item number 6 is any other items of business that the chairman of the committee decides are urgent. I have none. So I'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the closure of the meeting. Members, I thank you for your contributions this afternoon, and I will draw the meeting to a close at 13:50. Thank you to any members of the public who are listening in, and the meeting is now closed.